Hello, everyone. My name is Diego Alfonso, and I'm one of your hosts of the Florida Aviation Network. We are broadcasting live and in the clear from the Aerospace Discovery at the Florida Air Museum, located at the Sun and Fun Complex in Lakeland, Florida. We're celebrating our 41st annual Sun and Fun Fly-In and Exposition. Today, our guests are the members of the Aeroshell Aerobatic team. For those of you that may not know what they do, let me tell you, they fly airplanes, but with a little twist. They are known as Precision Flight Demonstration Team, flying my favorite airplane, the T6. So, folks, the Aeroshell Team. Steve?
How you doing? Steve Gus.
Nice to meet you.
Yep. Good.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Bryan, nice to meet you. You know, there's always pilots and non-pilots when they look at aerobatic pilots or they see aerobatic pilots doing their thing. There's always that thought of, as far in my case is, you know, I wish I can do that, you know, that type of thing. And I'm pretty sure you guys that do this for a living, that thought it's kind of predominant, like at 24/7, I would imagine. So what we want you to do right now is just to tell our audience exactly what is the Aeroshell Aerobatic team.
Well, what we do is formation, precision, aerobatics. To make it easily understandable, we basically do the same thing as the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds, except we do it in propeller-driven airplanes. Right. We do diamond formation, loops and barrel rolls with the smoke. The only difference is ours, it's up close and personal.
Yes.
I mean, we're down on the deck. The highest we ever get is about 1,800 feet, so you can actually see us inverted in the airplane while you're looking up and you see up in the cockpit.
Correct. And very tight.
6 to 8 feet.
Yes.
6 to 8 feet, somewhere right in there. Now, we took some riders this morning on a funny note. We took some riders this morning. They'd seen us fly before, and they went, "You guys really do fly that close." I was watching you guys. I said, "Well, they're right not that close, but y'all really are."
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's what tight formation flying is. It's all about. Now,
I told them I got lost one time, so I said I'm never getting lost again, so I stay in there close.
Well, not lost, temporarily disoriented.
That's it. That's it.
I used to do that on cross countries, you know. Now, let me talk to
Mark.
Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, give us a little bit of insight into what made you become an aerobatic pilot, and what is your position in the team?
Well, of course, I fly lead for the team, and but you know, everything in aviation is always a stepping stone. I remember years ago, I grew up in a flying family, and we had some airplanes that were capable of aerobatics, and so if all you ever flew were Bonanzas or Cessnas, you probably wouldn't be doing a lot of aerobatics. But we had Stearmans and that kind of thing, and so we had airplanes that were aerobatic capable.
Right.
And so we went out and experimented, and anyway, one thing leads to another. You do aerobatics in a Stearman, and then we did aerobatics in a T6, and then of course did it in Cubs and other things, and then of course with the Warbirds, you know, flying formation is very popular. Not necessarily aerobatic formation, but you know, they have a whole program called the FAST program where you go out and, you know, people with T6s, they'll get their FAST card and then they can fly military formation at air shows. And so anyway, but everything kind of leads to another. So you get where you're doing formation, well then, and you're doing aerobatics, well then next thing you want to do is formation aerobatics. And
of course.
It's a stepping stone. It's not, it doesn't just start at one time. It goes way back.
In other words, you don't become an aerobatic pilot right now. It's kind of a little bit over time.
Yeah, it's kind of baby steps. You want to ease into it slow.
Well, that's why you guys still around here.
That's right. What's the old saying? There's old pilots and bold pilots, but no old bold pilots.
You got that right. I was just telling a cadet this morning that I interviewed from England. I said, That's how you get your hair to be this color in this business.
That's right. You
Because-
flown a T6?
No,
You never have?
no.
I will have to fix that up.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Come on. To me, that is the most. Actually, it was probably the first plane I got. I was born in '45, and
Same age as my airplane. It was born in 45.
that's right. And in Cuba, that's what they had. They tried, because most of the training that was been done in South America, all the airplanes will go from here to there. And I remember the roar of the engine. I was a young kid, and so hanging there on the fence, and that thing will hit in your chest, and so it's just a tremendous airplane, a beautiful airplane, and but we're going to talk about that. Bryan, I'm going to post to you basically the same thing. Fill us in a little bit on the original thought of becoming a pilot and an aerobatic pilot.
Wow. I don't know. I just do a lot of daydreaming when I was in school, when I was a kid, and living in the South, there was no shortage of crop dusters flying by, and they were mostly Stearmans that had been converted in those days, spraying the sugar cane and the rice around that area. So when I looked out and daydreamed out the window, there was something to look at. And so that always intrigued me. I always liked that, and I liked the old movies about World War I flying, that kind of thing. So that's how it pretty much got into my blood. And then the aerobatic side of it was really just an offshoot of that. If you dream about like the air combat stuff, that's just aerobatics is just a part of it. And I think as I grew older, I realized more it was really had a desire to have that kind of control, that kind of flexibility and freedom to be able to just have full command of the sky, the airplane, and be able to fly in any attitude.
Yep. I remember one time I was in a group and we were watching aerobatics, and one of the persons, which I assume was not a pilot, referred to as aerobatic pilots as being crazy. Hey, look at that crazy. And I never try to correct anybody. That's their business. But I just said, no, I said, they're not crazy. Those are precision flying. Everything that you see done over there seems reckless, but it's the product of carefully preparation, careful practice every day until they hone those skills so they can do that.
Right,
And a crazy person cannot do that.
Right, and it's a kind of a natural progression. Once you start to pursue it, and you start to something goes well, then, and you can make it better, then you just keep striving for better.
Exactly.
And you try to formations that you're just trying to get closer and trying to maintain it better than anybody else.
And even one of the things that gave me an insight into what aerobatic pilots do, not what they do, but really how they do it, is after I became an FAA inspector, and I went to my first air show, and I had to, check and make sure that you guys had all your cards and all this and all that, and then watching the briefing between the pilots. That kind of I didn't know that. I really didn't know that existed at that time.
Like
and that's what really made me think how carefully you guys plan everything, because a little error up there is.
Well, my father, Merle, Gustafson, he flew everything that the commemorative Air Force had, everything from Focke-Wulf 190s to Bearcats to everything. So I grew up in the aviation world, and he had a golden rule, and the golden rule was always do any aerobatics up high at least 100 times perfectly before ever trying it down low.
Yeah.
So, and always have a mentor, somebody that can coach you along, and he was mine, and I started doing air shows when I was 19.
Right.
And just been doing them ever since. And that golden rule, I've never forgot it, and I teach other people. Never do anything spontaneous. Just what you said, plan it. Even it might look reckless if you pre-planned it practiced it up high for at least 100 times, had it flawlessly.
Right.
There's nothing dangerous about that.
Right. It's got to be. It's got to be. You don't know this, but I'm also an AMP. I'm also a mechanic.
I am also.
And I remember when I went to the first shop that I went to, and the shop foreman Tom, I was a young kid, and he said, "I think you and I are going to get along pretty good. But if you really want to make sure that we get along pretty good, you got to do one thing for me." And I said, "What's that?" He says, "Never do anything new by yourself."
Yeah, it's a good rule. Because if you are, you're experimenting, and there's no room for that.
Exactly. And he said to me, if I say to you, you go over there and pull that starter from that morning, and you've never done it before, you have to tell me, Tom, I never done that.
That's
and
it.
then I go, but see, that carry over to my flying career.
Exactly. Yep.
And people call me chicken.
There's only a T6. There's only when you're flying solo aerobatics. There's a certain level you get to. Once you reach that level, there's about you peaked out. There's only so much the airplane can do. Anything past that, you're dangerous or you're just asking for it.
Right.
So when each of us had gotten to that level, well, then what else can you do? Formation aerobatics. And formation aerobatics is a whole new ball game. It's an entire new ball game, and that never gets old.
Right.
You're flying 6-8 foot off somebody's wing, low level off the deck aerobatics. I've been doing it now for 30 years, and it's just still, it's a challenge, and it's also just inspiring to be able to do it, and I just going to that next level. So if somebody ever gets bored aerobatics, never push it beyond, and then because you might not be here.
Exactly.
Find another way to satisfy that urge, and maybe do some formation aerobatics. But before you do that, talk to somebody and get with somebody that's done it before. Don't just try it on your own.
Exactly. I remember Clint Eastwood said, "A man's got to know his limitations." You
I
know
said
what I mean?
amen to that one.
And that is that holds in our world of aviation so much, because a lot of people get in trouble just because they push, and they don't understand where you don't have to prove anything. You just
I don't have nothing to prove.
We've had several
Exact-
cases where Steve and I flew wing for several years. Before I flew lead, I flew right wing for about 12 seasons. And what we end up doing is, because we're striving the whole time to make the formation symmetrical. And so if you look across the formation, you've got one guy's a little closer or a little wider, you'll try to match that position. But you typically don't ever back out. The other guy will move in where you are. And so then you move in, and then he moves in, and you move in, he moves in. And then all of a sudden you get after the after the show and say, "No, wait a minute, I'm not getting any closer than that." I said, that was enough. We're good right here. And that's where we are.
I remember when he told me that. He finally comes up to me and he goes, "Okay, I'm not getting any closer than that." I said, "Man, I've been waiting on you to say that." I don't want to get any closer either. But that's what keeps it fun. But we just have a big time. We've been as far south as El Salvador, Central America.
Oh yeah, I know.
To as far north as Nova Scotia, Canada.
Right.
And just going all over, it's just been awesome. And all of our sponsors, if it wasn't for Aeroshell and Champion, and you see on our shirt.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Lincoln,
that.
it's so many. If you ever look on our website, you'll see them all.
Oh yeah,
And if
I did my homework.
And a lot of them are here. If you do, just go up and thank them, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to do it. Because a lot of air shows we go to, they can't afford. You know, a T6 is awful thirsty,
Yes, sir.
and they love fuel. And,
Yes, and maintenance.
and,
I mean,
and maintenance.
those airplanes has to be maintained
Yeah,
even.
mine's the same age as you.
That's right.
A
That's right.
1945. I think yours was a 43 or
Mine's a 43.
43. So, but the airplanes are just robust. They were built to do what they're doing now, and North American really built a fantastic trainer.
Oh, it was overbuilt.
It really was.
It was overbuilt.
Thank
At that time, there was not a thing that I learned later in my days, quality control. there was no quality control back then because I realized I learned what quality control means, and it means let's give him less for a little more.
That's quality control.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I
And
know exactly what you're saying.
when they built those airplanes were overbuilt. I had a 56 Apache.
And if you look at a T6, a North American AT6 Texan, what we flying, if you look on them, there's only, what, 2 ADs?
Yeah, well, 2 reoccurring ADs.
2 reoccurring, and one of those is inspect for corrosion.
Which is
Which you do anyway.
Obviously,
right.
and the other one was a one-time thing, and all it was a clamp, and they basically cut it in half and bolted it. So you got an airplane that's 70 years old with only 2 ADs on it.
right.
That's unheard of.
Yep.
Well,
Look
that's
at
one of the
any of these
reasons-
airplanes now. I mean, there'll be 50, 60, 70 ADs.
Well, that's why
That's
you
right.
still, there's still there's over 300 T6s still flying in the U.S., and that's because it doesn't have any real Achilles heel. Because most airplanes that you only see few quantities, for example, like a BT-13, they have over the years had problems with their fuel systems. You couldn't get them to stop leaking, and so needless to say, the airplanes got scrapped over time. Airplanes that had poor quality power plants, same way. If the airplane wasn't reliable, it didn't survive. But the T6, because of its reliability, is still in full service today.
Oh yeah. Those planes are icons in our business, like the DC-3
Right.
and the T6. I mean, they were built to stay.
And they're a good air show airplane.
Of
They're a
course.
good platform, and people just enjoy to watch them fly. And like you said, listen to them. And you
The
get
sound.
when you
is
get
just-
4 of them together coming downhill at about 240 miles an
Yep.
hour. Maybe one day I'll get to watch it. I'm always up there, but maybe one day I'll get to sit down. I've never seen it from down.
You should. It looks pretty though. It looks bright. The way you guys do it, it looks flawless. It looks like it looks like ballet. It looks like
Thank you.
I mean, it's just. I mean, I'm a fan.
Well, thank
Among other things, I'm a fan. Now, let me ask you, Bryan. Are there any war stories? Anything that you may share?
War stories.
Hey now.
Well, once on a trip to Acapulco. There's plenty of war stories. Some of it's mostly about most of them involve teams and friends, close
Sure.
friends, and we get pretty adventurous at times. But it's a lot of them. What we do in the shows is so programmed that the routine is. I mean, we're always trying to get every little bit of it right, but it is pretty well programmed. The stuff that is more of the war stories is on cross countries and stuff like that. Did you know Freddie Cabanas?
No.
He was from Southern Florida, and he did air shows all over South and Central America, and a good old friend. And he used to be part of our. We used to hear him on the radio all the time.
Oh, yeah?
doing these cross country trips.
Now, let me ask you, Steve. How long do you, or how often you change the routines, or you more or less stick with the?
We don't change it much. If you've flown a T6, you'd understand why. We do change if we have a small box. If we have an average box, we have a show. We have a low show. If the ceilings are below 2,000 feet, we have a different show.
Right.
But if we have a narrow box, we might have to change 1 or 2 maneuvers. And before we ever do that, we always do a ground check, and Mark walks us through it. This is exactly what we're going to do. And now we've all done those.
Right.
You know what? It's like Bryan was trying to say. What we do is a choreographed routine, like dancing together.
Exactly.
And there's not much talk on the radio except for when Mark is commanding power changes. Power coming in, power coming out, smoke on, smoke off. If the wind is blowing a little bit, he might say, tighten the turn. I'm going to have to extend this turn before I come back in to push further into the wind before we turn back so we don't miss show center. There's a lot more to it than just, getting in there. And in some of the crosses, I might have to hesitate for 2 seconds and then pitch over the top to make us hit show center and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, it's like he says, a choreographed routine. The only time we ever change it is if we're put in a predicament where we have to change in the box. And the reason is to get the max. These airplanes weigh 5,000 pounds with 600 horsepower, so the power to weight ratio is pretty minimal. We don't have a lot of extra thrust and a lot of extra horsepower, so we have to, the way we put this thing together is get the maximum amount of energy between maneuvers to get to the next maneuver.
Exactly.
And so when you start changing things, you might lose 15 miles an hour on this next maneuver that you really needed.
Right.
So, and then when you also, if you start, it's like throwing somebody a curveball. I always say, don't throw me a curveball because I want to expect that pitch the same way every time.
Right.
And that's the goal, is everything the same, and because it keeps it safe that way.
Exactly. Now, one thing that most people don't realize, spectators at air shows, is the rigidity by which you guys have to perform, because you just say the box and to stay center show and all that. They have no idea
No, I don't have a
that
clue.
not only are you flying an aircraft, you have somebody else next to you, but you at the same time have to be watching the ground so that you can stay within the requirements of the FAA.
And you have to look at it this way. Well, Mark's he's leading with me on one of his wings and Bryan on the other wing and Gene in the slot. Our wingspan is almost that of a 747, and he's trying to keep that 747 inside of a box that's less than 2,000 feet tall, and the maximum box will end up using about 4,000 feet.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that, and the wind pushing on crowd or away from the crowd. That's a big, huge thing. If it's an on crowd wind, it's stepping the thing out enough to not get over the line. It's all, keeping all that. So you're right. It's a lot
the
more
heat of
to
the
it than
day.
just getting up there
Yeah,
flying.
the heat
It's
of the
nothing
day, when
like
the
that.
air thins out, the show gets bigger, but you've got to sometimes keep it inside, the box if it's a small box, so it changes the turnaround. So every performance has its own challenges, and they're all a little bit different. They may look the same, but they'll be a little bit different.
And that's what I love about it. Like I was told earlier, formation aerobatics, low-level formation, never gets old.
Right.
If it gets old, I need to quit and go find something else. to
You
do.
don't
right.
if it gets old, then it becomes complacent.
Sure.
And that's when you open yourselves up to you potential accidents, or then you're not as proficient. But when you're on your toes, then you're flying at your best, and that's what we have to be to do what we do.
Yeah.
I happen to investigate a lot of accidents that the reason for the accident was the pilot did not make that connection. In other words, you got to know when to quit, you got to know when to stop, you got to know when you're getting over the line. My kid, he's a captain for United, and he flies 737s, and I told him, I said, you Baker rock me. If I'm trying to fly an airplane and you think that I'm not capable of doing that thing, you Baker rock me. You put me in a home somewhere.
Yeah.
Because pilots, not as a rule, but some tend to push that way.
Right.
They do.
And then you find yourself outside where there is no return.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having us, and thanks for everything you do. And
Well, I really appreciate you guys coming here, because not only us, but our viewers, and listeners who are getting really a little bit of an education of what you guys do out there, which is really not a crazy thing to do. It is really a professional thing to do. Anyway, we're done. And my name is Diego Alfonso, and I'm the host for Florida Aviation Network. And we'll see you in a little bit.